Hot takes from the writing side of Tumblr. We're looking at some different hot takes, pet peeves, and unpopular opinions on Tumblr about fiction and fanfiction writing. Do you agree with them or not? And what are some of your own potentially unpopular opinions when it comes to writing? Leave a comment after the video. Weird fanfic pet peeve of mine. When characters are in their late teens or early 20s but have jobs and or life experiences they would realistically only have in their 30s and later. Like, I'm sorry, but having a 21-year-old doctor or a 23-year-old fully trained and experienced FBI agent takes me out so hard. Perchance an unpopular opinion, but the obsession with creating relatable characters needs to stop. There are so many writers on forums and elsewhere asking for advice on that, and it needs to stop. Trying to make characters relatable is how we get bland, boring protagonists with no special traits and the personality of a wet dish rag. Forget relatable, make characters interesting. Make them fun or intriguing and entertaining and let your readers' empathy do the rest. People don't have to relate to a character to feel and root for them, and even if they did, folks have managed to project their entire self on the weirdest characters ever, so somebody will relate regardless. Just make them interesting. Your readers' brains will do the rest. For real though, I cannot stand a hopeful ending. Give me happily ever after or give me nothing. I want them to get married and adopt a pet, or I want them to both die young. No in between, no nuance. Give me wish fulfillment or give me death. Hot take. Characters in fictional worlds or universes or any setting other than our Earth as we know it would not use our curse words. Stop taking the cheap way out. Stop ruining my fantasy immersion experience with elves that say and trolls that say asshole. You're over here trying to have me believe this whole other world that you supposedly came up with, and that right there is what prevents me from suspending my disbelief. Be original, you dimwits. I don't know who needs to hear this, but if your white, cis-het, female action girl protagonist is also pretty and feminine, you are not writing a revolutionary deconstruction of gender roles. So please, stop congratulating yourselves for it. Can we writers please stop promoting the mean girl trope? 1, there aren't that many mean girls in the world. I worked in education for almost 10 years and have met a very small number of girls that would be called mean. 2, it promotes a girl versus girl mentality. We're already at the bottom of the totem pole, we don't need to drag each other down even further. And 3, it tells children of abusive or neglectful parents, of which there are many, that it's okay to lash out and hurt others in retaliation. We need to teach these kids to be better than their parents. Hot take. Characters don't need wild fantasy names, especially if the setting is low fantasy or not fantasy. Sure, Lord of the Rings can have Bilbo Baggins and Gandalf and Sauron, but a modern romance? People name their kids wild stuff sometimes, yes, but not every character needs a name like that. Names can be mundane. Look at Harry Potter and Percy Jackson. Yeah, you do have names like Dumbledore and Newt Scamander, but that's an exception, not the norm. If the character themselves is memorable, then the name will be memorable. The character makes the name, not the other way around. Yes, it's fine to have some crazy fantasy names sometimes, but it's not a necessity. And I feel like a lot of books I've read or seen lately insist on having their characters named outlandish things just for the sake of it, even when it makes no sense in the setting. I hate it when people say they don't like it when fantasy novels have characters with weird names and say, just give them normal names. What is a normal name? Every country has different names they define as normal, and if they heard names outside of their country, they might think, huh, that name is weird, or how do you pronounce it? Why is it spelled that way? A normal name is subjective. You want to know why? Because all names are made up. That's how names come to be. You think names like Julia, Alexander, Anna, Fiona, etc. magically came into existence? No, someone made it up, and people liked it enough to also name their children that. Shocking. The only reason there are names people consider normal is because they were used long enough that people aren't going to bat an eye if you name someone Sunny or Angel. If someone decides to name a fictional character Vosniko or whatever, it doesn't matter. No matter how weird the name is, if someone calls themselves that and wants to be referred to by that name, then it is just as much a valid name as every other name you've heard in life. But I can't pronounce these names for fictional characters. Get over it. Could a white person pronounce an African name easily? Could a Chinese person pronounce a Nordic name easily? Could a Russian person pronounce a Korean name easily? I don't think so. So not being able to pronounce a name isn't valid criticism. So sorry that some people didn't want to name their vampire prince Jeremiah. I know this is a hot take for writeblr, but you should be able to start, pause, discontinue, and abandon your works in progress without feeling guilty. All these memes about works in progress sitting unfinished, and the guilt that comes from knowing your followers expect content, and thinking you can't ever finish anything. Well, guess what? You're not gonna finish something if you're miserable writing it. A lot of writeblrs on here are always saying not to stress over meeting your word count goals, or are actively discouraging people from fixating over word count. I disagree. I think setting word count goals can be incredibly helpful when working on a work in progress. It forces you to actively sit down every day and just write. You just have to let go of your inhibitions and let the words flow. Because the more often you write, and the more often you stick to a schedule and meet your goals, the more likely you are to break through writer's block and actually finish your work in progress. In fact, discouraging people from worrying about word counts may be keeping people from staying focused on their work. Unpopular opinion alert, I guess, but write for yourself. Do not write for other people's approval, and honestly, this can extend to any kind of creative outlet, but I'm specifically talking about fanfiction authors. Like, writing fanfic has always been a thankless task, and I fully understand always wanting to get feedback or interaction or something, but readers will always be selfish, and that's okay. If you want love and adoration, then you have to write what readers want to read. If you want to write something that matters to you, you have to accept the reality that maybe no one will care. As a reader, you decide what you want to read and how you want to read it, and just because someone made content doesn't mean you have to love it, and just because you went through the painstaking effort of writing it does not mean that people are obligated to interact with it. You should write it because you want to, and not with the expectation that just because you wrote it, people will automatically care about it. So I'm unsure if this is an unpopular opinion, but I dislike and am terrible with those writing or dialogue prompts you see everywhere on social media that start out with an actual line or snippet of text that you're supposed to use as the start and build upon. I feel like it dictates so many aspects of the narrative that could be chosen by the author with intention and purpose. Direction and point of view and tone all contribute to the thematic and or aesthetic value of the piece, whichever kind of literary criticism floats your boat. And I don't think having them chosen for you helps you develop as a creator. Topic and theme prompts have much more creative liberty and let you really go somewhere with the ideas. 100 words to use instead of said and similar lists are pointless, because most of them don't work. You end up using a word that means something completely different than what you intended. Using thesaurus words takes away the ease of reading. Simple words make for better writing. Nothing is wrong with said, or asked, or shouted, or replied. One of my biggest writing pet peeves is when people use the word scream when it really doesn't need to be used, or there are much better words that can be used to accurately convey something. Like, for example, Betty screamed at her brother for taking a pancake off her plate. Like, what is she screaming for? I associate screaming with lots of pain and anger. Try using words like shouted or yelled or convey frustration with an action. You can quote me on this, but if we're talking romance, awkwardly trying their best will always be a million times more romantic than any swoony, everything is perfect, and them's the facts. Give me characters being disasters. Give me the awkward losers in love. I don't care for perfection. Give me people. The reason why non-canon ships in shows and or movies are often more popular in fandom than the original canon couple is simply because, if badly written, the romance is solely treated as a romance and not as a friendship that becomes more. People don't want just pretty faces and kisses and dramatic music. They want the trust, happiness, sorrow, and attachment that comes with deep friendship, and this friendship is the secret to any relationship that may come after that. Writers forget that sometimes. If Charlotte Bronte can write a book that people often say she doesn't need the first 10 chapters of because it's an info dump, don't be afraid to put minor info dumps in your stories. Hot take. Villains going on "we're not so different" rants, and the hero being affected by it, or heroes doing a "no, I'm not like you," are not inherently bad tropes. These are only bad when they result in the characters behaving inconsistently. And no, the hero killed many of the villain's minions but is sparing the villain's life isn't even automatically inconsistent. If they're going on a John Wick rampage and killing everyone in their path, torturing non-combatants for information, etc., yeah, that's crap. But a character killing people who are actively trying to kill them, or someone else they care about in the heat of battle but refusing to just execute someone who's not in a position to fight them for revenge or hatred, or stopping some nebulous possible future threat, isn't hypocrisy. It's called having rules of engagement. Unpopular opinion, but I really hate enemies to lovers unless it's borderline comical, because if someone berates me every day and actively makes my life hell, I'd just leave. I've said this before, but I don't understand enemies to friends to lovers. Half of the fun of enemies to lovers is the ongoing tension of falling for someone you are supposed to hate. If you come to terms with not hating them before you fall in love, then what is the point? Really, enemies to lovers works best when there is no good and bad side, like when everyone's just a little right and a lot wrong. It's supposed to be messy. It's supposed to make characters question themselves and their values and who they work for and what they do, which is a lot more fun because 1, both characters are doing that, and 2, there isn't one character who is obviously correct to the audience. For the people who spend all of their energy publicly hating on first-person fics, if you ask someone about their day, do you expect them to tell you in third person? The correct answer is no. It's weird, right? I understand that it can feel weird to read a lot of first-person fics because some people don't utilize first-person very well by focusing too much on unnecessary details, but in their basic form, they're meant to be the main character explaining what's happening around them as if you directly asked them what happened. It isn't meant for you to read it as if you were experiencing it. I've definitely read first-person fics that take me out of the story because they focus on the wrong things, but first person is about focusing on the thoughts, emotions, and experiences of the character that's speaking, and that's it. Personally, writing in first person allows me to connect to my character, and lets me connect to the emotions, environment, and experiences of the character in a personal way, so I know how to characterize them better. All of the hate on first-person fics has made me feel like I need to write in third person to reach a larger audience, but writing in third person disconnects me from the story and the character, and it causes my writing to not feel as genuine, and that completely destroys my motivation. Predictable writing does not automatically mean bad writing. Just because a movie, show, book, etc. goes the way you expect doesn't make it bad. Bad execution makes bad writing. Hot take, but the idea that the classic young adult character description of looking at themselves in the mirror and saying what they look like is bad because no one does that in real life is kinda wrong. Okay, hear me out. First of all, most people don't describe their motions in the middle of a fight. Most people don't describe themselves walking down the street, or eating food, or trying to fall asleep, or how the clouds look. That's the thing about books. If people only described the things in books that they describe in real life, it would be pretty much incomprehensible. Second, what else are you supposed to do with a mirror? That is, besides trying to murder ancient Greek monsters without getting turned to stone, a mirror is literally for the purpose of being able to see yourself. It's not bad because no one looks in a mirror and describes themselves, it's bad because it's a cliche. If you're gonna write it, either accept the fact, or put your own spin on it. Hot take, you can't write a story without some form of conflict. Every story needs conflict. That's what drives your story. One of my biggest pet peeves in writing, and mainly fanfics, that I notice a lot, is repeated use of phrases like the shorter man and the taller man. I get that when writing fanfics, especially in fandoms where all the characters use the same pronouns in a lot of fics, referring to characters by their pronouns can get confusing, but constantly seeing their names to clarify can feel like too much, so features like height are often used to differentiate. But it completely ruins my immersion when the shorter man and the taller man are used too much. It feels like the author doesn't trust me to remember how they envision the characters. It feels like the author is pushing against my personal headcanons, like, no, you're not allowed to imagine them being the heights you like. This one is taller, and this one is shorter, and I will keep reminding you of that. I get authors want to share their vision in their writing. I myself always mention how I visualize the appearances of the characters to share my vision with the audience, but I also don't really mind if readers decide to read my fics but completely change the appearances of the characters in their imagination of it, if that makes it more fun for them. People who try to dictate how other people consume media are lame. Ain't nothing wrong with delving into each page and theme and taking it explicitly as the author intended and writing papers on the morals and plot points. Also isn't anything wrong with taking two characters you think are funky and squishing their faces together like Barbie dolls to make them kiss and doing nothing else. No one is hurting you by having fun with media in their own way. Chillax. Anyone who doesn't write their Sims fanfiction with the dialogue in Simlish is a coward.